Welcome to this week's edition of the Top 10 in Prophecy, brought to you by The Watch Post, your home for end times news and last days commentary. I'm your host, the Watchwoman at her post. Today is Saturday, April 25th, and this is episode 106. This has been one crazy week, and boy, do we have some stories for you. We begin with story number 10 about the mass shooting at a Baton Rouge mall that left one person dead. On April 23, a targeted mass shooting erupted inside the Mall of Louisiana when an argument between two groups escalated into gunfire in the food court. Innocent shoppers and workers were caught in the crossfire as chaos erupted in one of the state's busiest shopping centers. One person was killed and at least 5 others wounded, some critically. This incident is part of a troubling surge in random and brazen public violence. As of April 23, the U.S. has already seen 121 mass shootings in 2026, a 45% increase compared to the same period last year. These events are happening in malls, parking lots, schools, and streets with disturbing regularity, often involving young people and escalating from seemingly minor disputes. Why it matters? We're not just seeing isolated tragedies anymore. We're watching the steady increase of wickedness Jesus warned about. When brazen public shootings become almost weekly occurrences and society normalizes sudden, shocking violence in everyday places like shopping malls, the moral fabric begins to unravel. This is exactly the kind of lawlessness that causes the love of most to grow cold. Story number 9. Southeast U.S. wildfires explode under severe drought. Uncontrolled wildfires have now scorched tens of thousands of acres across southern Georgia and northern Florida. On April 22, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp declared a state of emergency for 91 counties in South and Central Georgia and issued the state's first ever mandatory burn ban across that area. In Brantley County, the major fire along Highway 82 destroyed at least 54 homes and threatened over 1,000 more, forcing widespread evacuations and school closures. Thick smoke affected air quality as far north as Atlanta. The region is experiencing one of its most intense spring droughts in years, with the vast majority of the Southeast under moderate to exceptional drought conditions. Florida officials have described the current wildfire season as one of the worst in recent decades. Why it matters? These aren't typical seasonal fires. When drought turns large parts of the Southeast into tinderboxes this early and forces emergency declarations across dozens of counties, we're seeing creation itself groaning under increasing stress, exactly as Scripture describes in the last days. Story number 8. 18 Christians killed or injured in fresh attacks in Nigeria. On the night of April 18, armed militants launched coordinated overnight attacks on Christian communities in Basa, Barkin-Ladi, and Riom areas of Plateau State, Nigeria. At least 8 Christians were killed and 10 more were injured. Some of the killings occurred near a Nigerian army position. This violence is part of a decades-long intensifying campaign against Christian farming communities in Nigeria's Middle Belt, primarily carried out by armed Fulani militants. What is often labeled a farmer-herder conflict has taken on a clear religious dimension, with churches and Christian villages repeatedly targeted. Why it matters? While Nigeria remains one of the deadliest places on earth for followers Christ, it's unfortunately not the only country with persecution problems. Korea continues to rank number 1 on the World Watch list for extreme Christian persecution, with reports of underground churches facing near-elimination efforts. In China, government pressure on house churches remains high through surveillance and detentions. Similar targeted violence against Christians is also occurring in parts of India, Pakistan, and Sudan. As we edge closer to the last and final days, Jesus warned us that this type of violence and hatred will continue to grow. Number 7. Volcán de Fuego unleashes sustained violent explosions. Between April 16th and 17th, Guatemala's Volcán de Fuego erupted in a sustained barrage of powerful explosions, 5 to 10 per hour at times. Incandescent lava bombs and ash plumes shot as high as 16,000 feet. The eruption sent glowing cascades of rock and debris racing down the steep slopes, along with small pyroclastic flows. Locals reported constant rumbling and shock waves felt for miles. Fuego is one of Central America's most persistently active volcanoes, with near-constant explosive activity since 2002. The last major deadly eruption was in June 2018, which killed over 190 people. Several thousand people live in farming communities directly in the volcano's path. Heavy ashfall caused respiratory issues and poor air quality downwind, with occasional disruptions to flights at Guatemala City's airport. Why it matters? The Earth is not just shaking, it's actively belching fire and ash with increasing frequency and intensity. These events line up with Jesus' warning of earthquakes in various places and the dramatic imagery in Revelation of mountains burning with fire. The groaning is getting louder.
Number 6. New Madrid fault line made the news, among others. A magnitude 4 earthquake struck the New Madrid seismic zone in Missouri's Boot Heel on Thursday around 1 p.m. local time. The shallow quake was felt across parts of Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Illinois, and Kentucky. This was the strongest event on the New Madrid Fault in recent years, the largest magnitude 4+ quake in the zone since 2005. At the same time, the Nevada swarm we reported last week continued with a 4.8 quake hitting Silver Springs on Wednesday. It was followed by multiple aftershocks and dozens of smaller tremors. This swarm began on April 13th with a 5.7 and has kept the region active. Experts say swarms like this are common in this region, but when the shaking continues day after day, it raises a deeper question: how much pressure is still building beneath the surface? A major quake in Japan also made the news this past week when a 7.4 magnitude struck off the Sanriku coast on April 20th. It triggered a tsunami warning for waves up to 10 meters, but actual waves were small, only about 1 to 2.5 feet, with no significant tsunami damage. Overall damage from the Japan quake was limited: 6 people injured, no deaths, and no widespread destruction of buildings or infrastructure. Why it matters: while Japan experiences thousands of quakes every year and routinely handles strong events, a 4.0 on the New Madrid Fault is far more unusual for the central U.S. The New Madrid zone is capable of catastrophic magnitude 7 to 8+ earthquakes, like the one 1811-1812 sequence that made the Mississippi River flow backwards. A major modern event there could devastate the I-400 and I-55 corridors, destroy key Mississippi River bridges, cripple the Memphis logistics hub, and disrupt supply chains across the heartland for weeks, with potential damage in the hundreds of billions.
Number 5. Russia unleashes deadliest aerial barrage of the year on Ukraine. Russia just launched one of the largest aerial assaults of the entire war. Nearly 700 drones combined with dozens of ballistic and cruise missiles in a single 24-hour period. The barrage hammered civilian areas and infrastructure across Ukraine, killing at least 17 to 18 people, including civilians in Kyiv, Odessa, and other cities, and injuring more than 100 others. Russia openly called the strikes retaliation for recent Ukrainian long-range drone attacks deep inside Russian territory, including strikes on oil refineries and a deadly incident in the Krasnodar region. Ukraine's air defenses are now under severe strain, with officials warning that stocks of advanced interceptors are running critically low. The attack disrupted energy infrastructure, caused widespread power outages, and forced civilians to spend hours in shelters. While the conflict continues to drain both sides, its broader global effect has been increased pressure on food and energy markets. Ukraine is a major grain exporter, and ongoing fighting keeps Black Sea shipping routes unstable, contributing to higher worldwide food prices. On the energy side, any escalation, including spillover effects from Middle East tensions, helps prop up Russia's oil revenues, funding the very war machine that launched this barrage. Why it matters? This isn't just another night of violence. It's persistent, unresolved conflict that refuses to fade. Jesus warned of wars and rumors of wars, and nation rising against nation, and this is exactly that pattern playing out in real time. Endless escalation, civilian suffering, and global ripple effects that touch every economy on Earth. Number 4. Iran seizes 2 container ships in the Strait and fires on a 3rd vessel.
The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps on Thursday seized two large container ships, the MSC Francesca, Panama-flagged, and the Epaminondas, Liberia-flagged, Greek-owned, MSC-operated, in the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state media released dramatic video showing armed commandos boarding the vessels. A third ship was fired upon. The ships were taken into Iranian waters for inspection. U.S. officials also confirmed that Iran laid additional naval mines in the strait this week. Why it matters? The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most critical choke points. Roughly 20% of global oil and a huge percentage of LNG passes through it every day. Even the threat of mines or continued seizures can drive up insurance rates dramatically, slow global shipping, and spike energy prices. If clearing operations drag on for weeks or months, it could cause serious disruptions to global fuel and food supply chains. This kind of economic leverage and distress among nations matches the kind of control the Bible warns about in the last days. Number 3. Israel pushes ahead with major Pride Day events at the Dead Sea. This week, Israeli organizers and officials heavily promoted two large LGBTQI events. The new Pride Land Festival, billed as the largest Pride event ever held in the Middle East, is scheduled for June of this year at the Dead Sea. They also confirmed the return of the full Tel Aviv Pride Parade on June 12th. The Tel Aviv Pride Parade was canceled the last 2 years due to active wars with Hamas and Iran. Yet this year, despite ongoing regional tensions, fragile ceasefires, and hostages still held in Gaza, they are moving forward with these major celebrations. Why it matters? Watching large-scale pride celebrations being held at the Dead Sea, in the shadow of one of the most famous biblical judgments for sexual wickedness, while the nation is still in a state of war, feels deeply symbolic to many believers. The Dead Sea region is the area traditionally associated with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. In Genesis 19, that region was destroyed by fire and brimstone because of rampant sexual immorality and pride. Number 2. Spielberg says there's more truth than fiction in UFO movie. Steven Spielberg stunned theater owners at CinemaCon this week when he teased footage from his upcoming film Disclosure Day, set for release June 12th, and declared, "A half a century later, I made Disclosure Day with a lot more certainty that there's more truth than fiction in the movie." For decades, insiders in government and intelligence circles have repeatedly said the public isn't ready for the truth about UFOs and non-human intelligence, warning that full disclosure could trigger mass panic, societal upheaval, religious crises, or loss of control over global systems. Spielberg's carefully chosen words have now ignited fresh speculation. Is Hollywood being used to slowly condition the public for something much bigger? Distinct sides are already forming. UFO researchers and disclosure advocates are celebrating the comment as a major cultural breakthrough that could prepare people for official revelations. On the other side, many Christian leaders and end times watchers are sounding alarms, viewing the film and the broader UFO disclosure push as potential setup for the biblical strong delusion, where the world will believe a lie. Why it matters: when one of the most influential directors in history publicly suggests his alien-themed movie contains more reality than fiction, it raises serious questions about what the public is being prepared to accept. This lines up powerfully with the scriptural warning of a coming powerful delusion that many will embrace in the last days. Now for the top story this week. Number 1. Trump administration puts U.S. industry on wartime footing. This week, new details emerged confirming that the Trump administration and senior Pentagon officials have held high-level talks with top executives from General Motors, Mary Barra, Ford Motor, Jim Farley, GE Aerospace, and Oshkosh about shifting portions of America's auto and heavy manufacturing capacity toward weapons, munitions, drones, and other military equipment. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has publicly described the effort as putting U.S. military manufacturing on a wartime footing, a deliberate echo of America's World War II arsenal of democracy model, when automakers halted civilian car production to build tanks, planes, and weapons. These discussions, which began before the Iran conflict but have accelerated, are aimed at rapidly replenishing U.S. stockpiles that have been heavily depleted by the ongoing wars in Ukraine and Iran. Officials specifically asked whether these companies could quickly convert factory lines and workforce if needed. Why it matters: this is not normal peacetime activity.
When the world's largest economy begins redirecting its premier industrial companies from making cars to making weapons, it signals that the U.S. is preparing for prolonged or expanded conflict. Jesus warned of wars and rumors of wars and nation rising against nation in the last days. This move shows those conflicts are draining resources so severely that America is now mobilizing its civilian industry, a major step toward full wartime economics.
That's it for this week's edition of the Top 10 in Prophecy. Join us again next week for another update. Until then, stay in the Word and keep your eyes on Jesus.
Thanks for watching. Please leave your thoughts about this week's stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and click the bell for notifications.